Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the webinar. My name is Tiyana Glenn, Project Manager on our Innovation Outreach team at the Afterschool Alliance, and I help coordinate the administration of the New York Life Foundation's AIM High Grant Program, along with a few members of our team. Next slide. So here you see the agenda for today's webinar. We will start with a quick overview of the AIM High Grant Program, its goals, and how it fits with the New York Life Foundation's other investments in out-of-school time programming. I will build off of this with a few other notes and reminders. Then we will move on to our tips for prospective applicants for the AIM High Grant Program. Then I will quickly go over most common questions that we receive from prospective applicants, give some general feedback from our experience with managing previous rounds of the program. And then lastly, I will give a couple final notes and reminders for applicants. Next slide. So let's go ahead and dive into the bigger picture of the AIM High Grant Program. Next slide. So the AIM High Grant Program supports middle school students and help prepare them for the transition from 8th to ninth grade. Research has shown that for disadvantaged students, more learning time in the form of high-quality after-school and summer programs lead to greater academic achievement, better school attendance, and more engaged students. AIM High is in its ninth year, and this year the grant program will provide 1.8 million grants to out-of-school time programs. 30 awards will be made nationwide through a competitive application process, which we will go over in just a little bit. So just to give some perspective, last year's program, we received 670 applications for 40 awards. In the recent cycles, we had 4 grant tiers, and this year we are moving down to 2 grant tiers. So we will have 15 two-year grants of $100,000 will be awarded to middle school programs to support efforts to help reduce school absences and chronic absenteeism, which has a strong impact on educational attainment. Unlike in previous years, applicants for the one-year grant will not have to meet a specific focus or theme. 15 one-year, $20,000 general operating grants will be awarded to programs that demonstrate successful student engagement strategies and have strong impact data. Next slide. The AIM High program complements the Foundation's ongoing national investments supporting out-of-school time programs that work with middle school youth. The mission of the New York Life Foundation is to provide financial security and peace of mind through their financial products, and these values are aligned with the work that they do through the foundation. Research shows that students who get to ninth grade prepared and on time are 4 times more likely to graduate from high school. This important step puts students right on path for academic and financial success. Since 2013, the New York Life Foundation has invested over $94.6 million in national middle school out-of-school time efforts, supporting organizations that provide thousands of middle school youth with after-school and summer programming. Next slide. AIM High was created to support local and smaller programs that fall outside the scope of New York Life's national level grants. The RFP helps them broaden their investments and reach more communities. New York Life looks at programs that can track, measure, and report against what we know are key indicators for success in high school. Those factors include academic performance, school attendance, on-time graduation to ninth grade, and developing strong and social emotional skills. That said, we know that many programs have been disrupted over the past few years, and programs' abilities to collect data may have been impacted. So we do not require that you track any of these data points. These are just simply examples of readiness indicators that are supported by research. However, in your applications, please tell us what you are able to track and share what you can in this regard. Next slide. I want to quickly run through the timeline just to make sure that you all know exactly what is going to be expected into the grant application process. As I'm quite sure you all are aware, the RFP is currently open and it will remain open until 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, March 7th, 2025. The review process will include a diverse set of experts from the out-of-school time field and experts in youth programmatic strategies. The vetting and review processes for the grant will take between 3 to 4 months to complete, so you can expect to hear back from us via email about the status of your application by the end of June 2025. For grant recipients, there are 2 possible grant periods. The grant period for the 2-year grants will begin in August 2025 and end in August 2027. And the grant period for the 1-year grants will begin in August 2025 and end in August 2026. Grant recipients for both grant categories will be required to submit reports throughout the duration of their grant period. For the 1-year grants, you will submit 1 final report, and the 2-year grants, you will submit a progress report and a final report. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, this year's AIM High Grant Program will include 1.8 million spread across 30 separate grants to out-of-school time programs. And we have two different types of grants. 15 grants of the $50,000 per year for a total 2-year educational attainment grant award of $100,000 will be awarded. Grant applications must address how funding will help reduce school absences and chronic absenteeism. Applicants must also describe in a meaningful way how the applicant helps build youth in their foundation skills that will support a successful transition to the ninth grade. Only after school and summer programs with organizational budgets of $500,000 or more are eligible to apply. Then we also have the 15 one-year general operating grants of $20,000 will also be awarded. Applicants for all one-year grants will be required to describe how they support middle school youth in the transition to high school. To be eligible for this grant, organizations must have an annual organizational budget of $200,000 or more. And for the purposes of the AIM High Grant Program, annual organizational budget is defined as the full organization's operating expenses from the most recent completed fiscal year. And next, I'm going to quickly run through the eligibility requirements that an organization or program needs to meet in order to be eligible for the grant program. Next slide. First off, all applicants must be registered as 501c3 organizations. Second, applicants must either currently serve middle school age youth or use the AIM High Grant funding to begin serving youth in this age range. For the purposes of the AIM High Grant Program, youth are considered to be middle school age beginning the summer before 6th grade and ending on the first day of 9th grade. Third, applicants must serve low-income youth. In order to be eligible, 75% or more of the youth served by the applying organization must be eligible for free and reduced price lunches. Lastly, applicants must not currently receive funding from the New York Life Foundation, either directly or as a pass-through funding from a parent organization. If you have any questions about the eligibility requirements or want to know more details about the exceptions that may exist for any of these rules, I will refer you to Appendix D of the RFP, which provides an FAQ for questions like these. Next slide. The 2-year grants will support increased educational attainment by helping programs reduce school absences or chronic absenteeism. Funding requests should directly address how funding will help address these school absences or chronic absenteeism. So examples of the types of activities that could be funded include sustaining or enhancing program offerings, expanding program to more students, development of staff, stronger school partnerships or communications, and/or data collection. Next slide. As general support grants, funds may be used to support the program's ability to operate and best prepare youth for success in the critical transition to high school. For example, a program may decide to direct funds to support direct service activities, professional development, capacity buildings, technical assistance, and/or program expansion. So funds may not be used for capital projects. And if you have any questions about eligible uses of funding, please feel free to reach out to us and we will attempt to help clarify. Next slide. So now that we've gone through the ins and outs of the grant, we are now going to provide some recommendations and suggestions. So the tips, recommendations, and best practices that I'm about to lay out in this portion are drawn largely from our long history of reviewing applications for the grants and awards. So here are our top 5 recommendations going into the RFP. Next slide. So number 1 is all questions have a unique purpose. You should approach every open-ended question as an opportunity for you to explain and illustrate the value of your program. We encourage you to make sure that you read the full RFP before you start writing your answers to gain a better understanding of what reviewers will be looking for in each question. When you read through the application in advance, you can see not only the specifics of what each question is asking for, but also how the questions throughout the application fit together to give you a good understanding of how to approach each question. Next slide. Number 2, be an advocate. So it's really vital to give reviewers a complete picture of the great work that your program does. Make sure that you share details on how the program is helping to meet the needs of its community, and think about ways to differentiate your program from others. When available, it can also be great to find best places within the application to demonstrate the program's impact through quantitative and/or qualitative data, but make sure that it is relevant to the question that you're answering. Keep in mind that our reviewers don't want you to provide just a list of program activities and outcome data. It's your job to bring your program of life for them. So reviewers become more attached to programs that not only provide descriptions of activities and data on the program successes, but also give them the information that they need to really understand the day-to-day experiences of youth that are in the program. Next slide. Number three, provide specifics. So details really matter in this case. We really rely on your application to give reviewers a complete and concrete picture of your program. It's also absolutely crucial that you don't assume that reviewers know anything in particular about your program, about your curriculum, or about your community. So if you have great outcomes, data, or strong answers to how your program addresses a specific prompt, reviewers will rely on you to convey that information in a compelling way that helps them understand the true value that your program brings to the youth and to your community. Next slide. Number four, keep it relevant. So be clear in your answers and always keep in mind the specific goals and priorities of the RFP and the intent of each question when answering them. It can be tempting to go off on a tangent and describe like all the great things that your organization does or the impacts that your organization has that are outside of the scope of any given grant opportunity. But for the reviewers, every word is precious opportunity for you to give them an important information that addresses the question at hand. So not only is it keeping it relevant and helpful for you as an applicant, answering questions with the word limits, but it's also helpful for reviewers to easily identify the point that you are trying to make. Next slide. Tip 5, and I think this is probably my favorite tip. Read, reread, have somebody else read, and then read it again. We've all been there before. That moment when you click send or you click submit, and then you automatically see a typo after you have submitted your application. And just note that once you submit, you cannot edit your application. So it's great to review your application multiple times before submitting your answers. And it can also be great to have your colleagues review or even someone outside of your organization review your answers prior to submitting your application. A fresh set of eyes is great for both finding those little errors that all drive us crazy and for finding those places where maybe you can fortify your application by providing additional details or context. Another reason why it's really good to have somebody else read your application as well is to avoid jargon. It's important to make sure that your answers to the questions in the application are really clear and concise. Next slide. So before moving on to the FAQs, I just want to give a quick reminder and a quick update on how to approach two particular questions within the application. Within the RFP and in the application system, we have provided links to downloadable sample charts and downloadable template charts for you to refer to when you're answering both the project expected outcome section and the budget and narrative section. The sample charts give you a good idea of how to fill in the details of the high quality answers for those sections. And you will need to upload both of these documents in the application system using the templates provided. And please note that the project expected outcomes chart in section C and the budget and narrative section in section D, is only for the 2-year grants. So the chart and the budget and narrative is no longer required for our 1-year grants. So that is something that's new for this cycle. Next slide. And in this section, I will quickly go through answering some of the most frequent questions that we get throughout the AIM High Grant Program. And for your reference, you can also find these questions and answers in the Appendix D section of the RFP, which is on page 35. Next slide. So the number one question, how many grants will be given? We have 15 grants of the $50,000 per year for a total 2-year grant amount of $100,000. And then we'll have 15 1-year grants of $20,000. So in total, 30 grants. Next slide. Can multiple programs or program sites from the same organization submit applications separately? No, each organization can only submit one application. However, if an applicant is an affiliate of a national organization, more than one affiliate can apply for funding so long as each affiliate that applies is currently not receiving grant funds from the New York Life Foundation. Affiliates of regional or national organizations that share a common employer identification number may submit applications separately under the same EIN so long as each affiliate has its own budget and meets the eligibility requirements laid out within the application. Next slide. Are organizations with annual budgets of less than $200,000 eligible to apply for any of the grants? Unfortunately, they are not. The minimum organization budget to be eligible for the grants is $200,000. Are nonprofit organizations that are not 501c3s eligible to apply? Again, unfortunately, no. Only 501c3 organizations are eligible to apply. Next slide. Is it the program budget or the organizational budget that will need to be met when it comes to the budget requirement? And then what budget will be used to determine this eligibility? So for budget requirements, it is the organization's full operating budget from the most recently completed fiscal year that will be that will determine eligibility. So for most organizations, this will be your FY23 budget. So for the $100,000 two-year grant, the organization annual budget must be at least $500,000. And then for the $20,000 one-year grant, the organization's annual budget must be at least $200,000. Next slide. What is the geographic scope of the grants? So anywhere within the 50 states and the District of Columbia, applicants from the U.S. territories are unfortunately ineligible. The New York Life Foundation prioritizes states in target areas in order to diversify their giving, and organizations in the target states will receive an additional 5 points for their application. So the target states for the 2025 grant cycle are, as you can see here on the slide, Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, Rhode Island, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Next slide. Are schools, school districts, colleges, universities, and/or government agencies eligible to apply? No. So no schools, school districts, colleges, and universities, they are not eligible for the Aim High grant program. And then can 501c3 organizations serve as fiscal sponsors for programs run by organizations that are not 501c3? So yes, 501c3 organizations may serve as fiscal sponsors for non-501c3 program providers. Next slide. So here I'm going to go through very quickly a summary of our feedback from previous rounds of the AMI grant program. Next slide. So first off, the first 8 rounds of the AIM High Grant Program we were really grateful for the wealth of high quality applications that we've received all over the country. With hundreds of applications submitted in each of the 8 years of the program, we have now given out 252 grants to the out of school time program field. It's important to double check everything to make sure your application is top notch and can stand out from the crowd. Okay, as you can see, we are very crowded when we receive applications, so make sure you keep this in mind. Next slide. I want to reiterate that the reviewers who will ultimately be reading your application are on your side. So if it was up to me, if it was up to any of my colleagues at that Afterschool Alliance, if it was up to any of the colleagues at the New York Life Foundation or anybody from our review panel, we would love to see each and every applicant receive funding they need to continue serving youth. The reviewer's job is to narrow the field. We are not going through and picking favorites, so we are trying to provide objective scores to each section of the application and weighing them according to a rubric that is aligned with the point values that were provided in the application itself. Your job as an applicant is to both provide thorough answers to each question that address all the different aspects of the question as asked, and also to provide a bigger picture and details throughout the application that give reviewers the information that they need to not only score your application highly, but also to advocate for and promote your application in discussions with other reviewers. Next slide. Other qualities of applicants that were a good fit for the program include applicants that specifically address 8th to 9th grade transition, and then applicants that focus their answers on benefits and services provided to middle school age youth, as opposed to elementary school or high school students. So applicants that did their best typically made compelling arguments that were really a good fit with the AIM High Grant program. So make sure you keep these in mind to not only have a compelling argument to show that you're a fit, but that compelling argument should definitely include that 8th to 9th grade transition, and also making sure that your benefits and services that you provide to youth are really focused on the middle school age youth. And I do want to also note 2 other things: that 1, there is a heavy focus on outcomes data, especially with the 2-year grant application. And then 2, our new and very young programs, or maybe programs that are just starting to serve middle school youth, they often have a greater challenge standing out from the rest. So make sure you keep those in mind whenever you are applying. And if you have any questions or you want to see our full list of characteristics of quality applicants, it is provided on page 5 of the RFP. Next slide. And then lastly, the number one reason that applicants lose points in the first round when their responses to questions left aspects of those questions unaddressed. So we know it's very tempting, especially if we're filling out a lot of grant applications, to do the plug and play when it comes to your grant writing. But it's very important to take time to tweak it to make sure that you ensure that your answers are a good fit for the question at hand. So again, pay attention to the specific aspects of the question that you need to address. It's fine to include details that maybe be out, they might be outside the scope of the question, but make sure that, those answers are, one, aligned with the question itself, but then two, your answer also addresses every aspect of the question as it is posed. It's important to recognize that when you omit a response to a particular question, the reviewer has no way of knowing that it's a simple oversight on your part, or if you or your organization just genuinely do not have a good answer for that particular question. So by leaving those details out, you're leaving that determination up to the reviewer. So again, you want to make sure you're answering every question to its entirety if you can. Next slide. I just wanted to take one last second to highlight the most important things for you to remember as you prepare your application for this year's RFP. Next slide. So of course, the due date is probably the number one reminder I have for you. Making sure that you submit your application by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, March 7th, 2025. A tip that we also have, as well as when it comes to filling out your application, is first download the application, review the questions, draft your answers with enough time to spare, and then again, of course, make sure that your answers are clear and that they are truly answering the questions at hand. Again, the strongest applications are often those that have the robust program data. And then lastly, reviewers will be unfamiliar with your program. So make sure you provide detailed information that will help reviewers gain a stronger understanding of the supports of your program. Next slide. And that concludes our webinar for today. So I would like to take a moment once again to thank you all for your time and your interest in applying for the New York Life Foundation's Aim High Grant Program. We hope that you found this to be very informational and that we, of course, wish you the best of luck with your application. If you have any questions that were not covered during today's webinar, please feel free to reach us at this email address right here, which is aimhigh@afterschoolalliance.org, and we will be sure to answer your questions. Again, thank you so much for your time today. Good luck with your applications and have a great day.